Let's start with a really hot one, Dr. Zach. I want to go into something we see a lot, and there's a lot of controversy on it, and I'm going to put on here on the screen, and that is feeding our dogs avocado. So before we jump into kind of our thoughts on this and what science says, I'll let you kind of speak to it as a veterinarian.
Yeah, so I guess everyone kind of sees that there's like a very common chart or like a poster that's always around. It's always like the top 5 things not to feed your dog. I feel like avocados one that's always attacked on there.
Yeah.
And, same with garlic kind of stuff. So I think that from what we know, there was like one study that was done back in 1994 that started this whole theory. And anything on Earth can literally be toxic at a certain level. So and there's parts that are more toxic than others. But when we look at stuff, maybe we need to look at a bit more instead of blanket statements. And so I think that causes a lot of fear. So the avocado is something that has really instilled a lot of fear for some reason, and which is understandable because there are parts of it that are toxic. So we have to just be smart about it. But the part that we usually eat, the fleshy part, the part that's nutritionally healthy, is not actually toxic at the amounts that we're eating it. So it's something that is a really good balanced food, honestly, and has an insane amount of nutrients in it. And so it's something that I feel is attacked in ways that doesn't make sense because we could be including this in it. It's not going to be something you have to feed every day, but it is something I think that is a superfood kind of alternative, or even like a bowl enhancer. We talk about that a lot. If we can't do whole foods all the time, light or raw or lightly cooked, then we have enhancers, and I think that's a really good one to consider. But it's something that takes a lot of effort, at least on the veterinary side, if you know about it, that to convince people that you're not going to kill them with the fleshy part of the meat. So just specifically, so the parts of the plant that we're not eating, the skin, the pit, and the leaves do have a high content of a certain toxin that can hurt dogs, but the fleshy part that we eat is not considered to have levels that are even close to toxic at the amount we're eating.
Interesting. Yeah. So to summarize, Dr. Zach, would you, if you had a dog in front of you, would you feed him or her some of the fleshy part of an avocado as like a meal topper or even as a treat and feel safe about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We should bust
And
that then.
yeah, right. And I would as well. And to give even more context, you mentioned a study, which I'll put on the screen here for those of you that want to like go and do even more digging. What I find interesting about this study, this is the one that I'll leave it on the screen here for a second, but basically this is the study that all of the articles reference when they're talking about and trying to prove that avocados are toxic. And really, this is back in the, I think, like you said, 1994. And what they did is they studied these two, I think it was just two dogs that were starving. So the poor dogs were ravenous for food, and they were in an avocado farm, and they ate tons of avocado, more than we would ever feed our dogs. And they ate not just the flesh, but they ate the pit, the skin, the stem, the leaves, everything. And unfortunately, they did become ill and I believe pass away. But they ate it in such excessive amounts. It's just like with humans and tomatoes. I was reading that like the leaves of tomatoes can have toxic compounds in them, but obviously eating the flesh of it is just fine. So I think when we're looking at, and the reason I wanted to address this was not to convince anybody to feed their dogs avocado. Your dog could go their entire life and not eat avocado. But I think when we have these almost inflammatory headlines of like avocados are going to kill our dogs, to me, it puts this wedge between pet parents and feeding real pet safe fresh human foods. And then I feel like it makes a lot of people feel like, okay, I'm just going to stick to overly processed foods and that's going to be healthy. What do you think about that, Dr. Zach?
No, I totally agree. And I think that there's a lot of stuff on the internet. We've seen that more and more nowadays, and I think that there's even a lot of people on in the human side as well that I see videos all the time about people walking through the grocery store and saying something about this, and it's all these are bad. You can't touch anything in this aisle, and then it's like there's a couple of doctors that are like, some of these are good, like don't say all these are bad,
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of fear mongering when it comes to, especially now, there's in the food and health space that some of it's right, but you have to do your own digging. So you know,
Yeah.
this is one of them that's relevant.
And Procter and Gamble did a study after that to kind of confirm once and for all, um, are avocados safe for dogs? And they essentially created an avocado extract and they fed it to tons of beagles for, I think it was over 6 months. And they found, Procter and Gamble found that not only was avocado extract healthy and fine for dogs, like it was completely safe. They actually had health benefits, as you spoke to earlier, Dr. Zach. So I think it's interesting, again, not that you need to go feed your dog avocado tomorrow, but I think it's important. This is kind of just shines a light on how beneficial fresh foods can be for our dogs, and that just like avocados, we see other headlines like raw meat. This isn't a dog food discussion, but like we see these other headlines like raw meat is going to kill your dog. And it's like, okay, wait, let's just hold on. Let's back up. Let's like look at the science. And it's not terribly difficult either, right? I mean, this is all very kind of surface level. These are peer reviewed studies. And like all studies, I'm sure there's, some opportunities for improvement. But I will say I have fed my dogs avocado flesh only, right? As you said, not the pit, not the skin or the stem, for years. And it's just a topper and treat, and they do just fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so next one is going to be another hot one, another hot topic. There we go.
We only picked hot ones, I think.
I know they're all hot. But garlic. What about feeding our dogs garlic, Dr. Zach? Would you feel safe feeding a dog garlic?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, exactly the same situation with avocados and the toxic compound in that the person, this is the toxin. In garlic, there's again, it's a dose relationship. Okay, so there is a chance for everything to be harmful in this life, and there's a chance for things to be healthy, and it's just what's the window that they can help. Um, so garlic carries a ton of health benefits. The list goes on and on. So it's something that for humans as well as for animals at the right amount is good. So yes, absolutely. When you create the right amount and the dose, that's it's food, but it still can be a dose. Then it's not toxic. It's healthy, and it's something that actually can be extremely useful. Especially some of the consults that I do that are either allergy based or things that involve health and wellness for longevity. Garlic is something that is this extremely amazing superfood that's right in front of us, easy to grow, that could be included. And I think that actually you did a video recently where you were like showing people that it's in almost all the kibble foods too. Like that's,
Yeah.
Guys are all worried about this, but I don't know if you read the ingredients and you make these, claims, but it's in the kibble too. So I think it's a very strong myth that needs to be busted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you talk about dosages. What is that saying? The dangers in the dosage or something. But basically, I think the original misled confusion around it, as you alluded to, was that veterinarians, understandably, were going off of a study that showed that garlic can be toxic to dogs. I think. Let me see if I have a screenshot of that here. I don't know if I pulled one up. No, I didn't. Oh wait, actually I did. And this
Yeah,
is
that's
actually
the one
another one. Yeah. So wait, we'll get to
I
that.
have.
So
One.
yeah, it is. So
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself. So basically, the study showed that garlic was toxic to dogs, but as Dr. Zach said, in really high doses, like more than we would ever feed our dogs in a reasonable amount. If I remember correctly, they would have to feed 5 grams of garlic per kilo
Yeah.
every day to dogs, which would be like 60 cloves to a large like golden retriever.
Yeah.
So yes,
Like
in that
5 cloves
amount,
per 10 pounds, I think, is something like that. So if your dog's eating
yeah.
5 to 7 cloves a day, then they're gonna have bad breath. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think even for humans, that would be like, I'm sure there might be some side effects. I don't know for sure. But I think with a lot of different foods or ingredients, if we were to feed that much or something, there definitely could be some toxic ingredients.
yeah.
But what's really interesting is where I was jumping ahead is this study here. Actually, so there was another study done, and I put it on the screen. So for those of you that want to go research it more, I encourage you to, because again, this is why I always say that on the platforms and when I'm collaborating here with Dr. Zach, like this is where curious pet parents get informed, right? Like we're just trying to give you the information so that you can make informed decisions. But this study showed that fed in a more realistic, reasonable, smaller amount, even for a longer period, that not only was garlic safe, but garlic was actually beneficial, which I know you were talking about that, Dr. Zach, is
Yeah.
like it can actually be healthful for our dogs. So it's almost can be detrimental to just completely keep it out for some dogs that might benefit from it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, it's something that, I was telling you when I'm talking about this because I'm like, you remember that adage about vampires that keeps the vampires away? Well,
Yeah.
it, something I include a lot of times in my consults is that, if you're looking to go the all natural route with the preventatives, like the flea and tick
Oh,
preventatives,
flea and tick.
that
Hmm.
garlic is a great thing to add in those months where the mosquitoes are bad, the fleas and ticks are bad, that you can include in the diet every other day. I get my dose, but it's usually about half a clove per 10 pounds is kind of
Yeah.
something I usually go by, and I think you could probably double that, honestly, but that's kind of definitely a safe route. But you can do that 4 times a week, and that being in the bloodstream is a deterrent to a lot of these parasites. So, it's something that if you combine that with an external parasite repellent for as needed use, I feel like that's a good place to start before we jump to, having to use the oral preventatives or the topical preventatives that, we know have pros and cons for sure. So, yeah, so I think that it's something that we need to get over quick, and garlic is good, just at the right doses, which is important for all of us.
Yes, in everything really, right? It's like, and the crazy thing, I know I kind of said this, but that study that I just showed, I mean, it literally showed that garlic in the appropriate amounts,
Mhm.
which you just mentioned, is highly anti-inflammatory. So it's like really can be really beneficial. And as you said, I forgot all about that, but I made a post a long time ago about feeding my dog some fresh garlic, never the jarred pre-chopped stuff. I
Right.
always, for me at least, I get if I can do organic, but just a raw garlic clove and you can just mince it up. You could probably, would you ever lightly saute it, Dr. Zach, or would you prefer it raw?
No, it's a little easier to cook, and there's just this window basically is the important part for getting fresh chopped garlic. That it's like, some people say 15 minutes. I don't think that's crazy, but relatively, you want to chop garlic fresh, and that's kind of how you want to include it in the food, and that's how. There's two compounds in there. One is a substrate, and one is an enzyme that when you crush or cut the garlic, that it activates it and it creates these molecules called thiosulfonates, which are the very beneficial um, compounds that help with maximizing health from it. So, and just side note, I don't have it in my backyard, but it's very easy to grow garlic at home. Like you can just take a couple of those and you can bury those and you can grow garlic super quick, like in months. So you can grow your own garlic, even if you have a minimal size backyard, like it's very easy to do, or even a pot you can grow it. So, you can create your own organic garlic. So, but yeah, so it's something you want to do fresh though, for sure, versus get the jar that's been sitting there for weeks to months by the time you get it.
Yeah, I've read that as well. So I'm glad we mentioned that. But what I was going to, and I kind of just am now for full circle, is there's many dog food kibbles and treats that have garlic and garlic extract in it. So again, for those people that are still sitting here like, I don't believe you, I'm not going to listen to you. First off, we're not trying to say that you need to feed your dog garlic. We just want you to have the information and you do with that with your vet as you'd like to do. I just want to make sure you're making informed decisions, but it is already in a lot of the most popular kibbles out there. You'll see it right in the ingredient deck.
Mhm.
On that note, actually, two things. One, you've just a friendly reminder that for those of you that are still kind of like at this point, you're like, okay, I want to start going a more natural, holistic route with my dog. Dr. Zach does have telehealth online vet consult for holistic and integrative specialty practices for your dogs. Or cats, actually, pets, both, linked in the description below. So for those of you that just want that personalized touch, you can do that. And then there are also free guides for like meal toppers, allergy guide, things like that, linked below. And then secondly, we can't talk about garlic and avocado without mentioning some of the foods that are common human foods that are toxic. So, what are some examples of truly toxic human foods for dogs, Dr. Zach?
So, I mean, the most classic one would be the grapes talk,
Yeah.
because we don't know yet still what's up with that. The theories changed from this nebulous, scary thing, but to something called tartaric acid, which is a compound that they think maybe is actually in the soil that they're growing grapes in certain areas. So, grapes, raisins, and currants. I've never fed a dog a currant, but that's the third one. I think they're a holiday treat. I've never seen one, but
Yeah.
that's a one that I would stay away from. And I get this all the time because people are like, oh, I've fed my dogs grapes all the time. My dog growing up had eaten grapes too, never died. But we know that a lot of them do, and I have gotten some in the past that they have died, and I've had to take care of them in the emergency room. So, that's one of them. Anything that includes that has methylxanthines in them, which is kind of your caffeine derivatives. So, those are things that are tough. So, dark chocolate, green tea, that's caffeinated. Those are things that can be toxic to dogs. So, those are some classics. I don't know if you want to have any others that you want to.
Chocolate, I think, is one. I don't know if we mentioned. And I don't know off the top of my head, but I know there's certain nuts that are toxic. Do you happen to know off the top of your head?
Yeah, macadamia nuts are like the
Macadamia.
classic one that can cause
Okay.
GI upset and cause neurologic abnormalities. So that's one you also want to stay away from. But
Yeah, and xylitol is another really popular one found in peanut butter and gum.
yeah,
Any like artificial sweeteners and sugar-free, like sugar alcohol things, I think can be pretty harmful, of course. So I think those are more common ones.
yeah,
And then I'm going to throw a little curveball at you, Dr. Zach. We didn't discuss this before, but another myth that's kind of falling within this is that, and we won't deep dive. We'll do another live on this because I'd like to deep dive more, but about essential oils, because you also have a company where you're making human grade, vegan, pet safe topical products. It's what I use on my dogs for their shampoos, their flea and tick preventative. It'll be linked below for you guys if you want to check it out. But in there, for example, you might find a pet safe lavender oil or eucalyptus oil. And sometimes I'll see people say things, and we see these in products a lot, but I will see people say things like, oh, I thought lavender is toxic, or I thought eucalyptus was toxic. Can you talk a little bit high level why that may not be the case in these pet safe products that you have?
yeah. So this is a huge one
I know.
because
We'll keep it high level because I
I
know
could
you could
sit
go
here
on for a long time,
it's
but
such a yeah. I mean,
yeah.
essential oils are so good for us. They're not gonna, in my opinion, not gonna one of them's not gonna cure everything. It's not like a cure all, but in combination, there's so many positive benefits of the majority of essential oils, and essential oils is just a phrase for an extract from a plant. It's the natural extract from a plant. It's similar to the person in avocado. I'm saying person, Persin, which is a fungicidal molecule that the avocado plant is making. So, these essential oils are just molecules that the plant makes that are helping to deter parasites from eating it, and are helping even sometimes to protect them from the sun. So, but essential oils are just this blanket phrase for extracts from certain plants. So, the majority of these essential oils are beneficial and not toxic. There's a few that are at certain concentrations again, and it's different for dogs and cats due to different ways their liver breaks it down. But for the most part, the ones you just mentioned, for example, like a good example is look at our external parasite repellent. We have it's made of 7 essential oils. It's water and 7 essential oils. That's it. And so we have citronella, we have cedarwood, we have catnip, we have lavender. There's allantoin, and so there's 5 or 6 at least that are the main ones, and then so those are not toxic to dogs. At least we wouldn't include them. Now that we do put on that one, like, be careful on cats, because in all honesty, the concentration that's in that bottle is most likely not going to hurt a cat, but we want to be careful because there are some, especially the citronellas, which are the citrus based ones, that can be a little bit difficult for cats if they were to lick a good amount of it. So there's a veterinarian, her name's Dr. Rourke, and she is, she calls herself the essential oils vet because that's what she focuses on. So I always try to look at the people that are focusing on an expert, and she actually has a great resource which is free, which is something I used in the beginning to learn which essential oils are safe and which are not. And then I went down my own rabbit holes after that. But there are a few that we have to be careful of. Tea tree is one that is, we talk about that one because it is good, but it's also, it has a very small window of efficacy if you're not using it right. So it can be toxic and it can be caustic to the skin, etc. So that's one that comes up a lot, like the clove anise group. Those can be, if given too much, can be potentially toxic. So there are some ones you have to watch out for. The main ones we look at in the stores and in the products that are natural, that are available, those are not going to be toxic for the most part. The more important thing is getting essential oils that are actually formulated to work and that are organic and that are all natural, because most of them are going to be synthetic, and or the concentrations in that product are going to be close to what is therapeutic. So it's actually the other side we really have to worry about, which is what I then talk to people about. It's not this thing's toxic. It's that, is there enough to even be beneficial, and is it a natural ingredient?
So it's really sounds like it's a balance between dosing, as you've been saying over and over, and then the quality of the product in general, but specifically here, the essential oil.
Yeah.
Which is why I know, like we launched our allergy guide. So for dogs that have itchy skin, constant hot spots, anal gland issues, dry, flaky skin, we have a guide. It'll be linked down below for you guys to check out. And it's like, I don't know, 30 pages long. And in there are, gosh, what is that term called? Not, what is the nutraceuticals?
Mm-hmm.
Nutraceuticals in there, which basically has list of products that are, some of them are essential oils that can be used. But in there, Dr. Zach specifically put, like, here's a list of some, but it's best, especially when using the true purest form, to work with a trained and experienced veterinarian on them, which I know, again, is why you started offering the online telehealth consults to help with that. Or, people can go to ahvma.org and find a vet there too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and even thinking, I keep going back to avocado, but like I remember reading a study somewhere that talked about, I think it was correlation, and kind of a loose correlation, where the persin, that fungicidal found in there in small doses could actually help kill cancer cells. So again, I'm not saying go use that to cure cancer in your dog, but I think it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, if you look at the other side of it, right, where we're like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of highly processed oils nowadays. And again, I'm not saying that oils are going to kill your dog, but there's ones that are better for you in a consistent amount. And there's ones that we try to do less, based on the 6:3 ratio, et cetera. And we have very few that are on the high list of ones that are great for us on a consistent basis. And avocado is one of them. So I feel like it's super detrimental to be putting avocado on that high list of things we should be avoiding. They're one of the top 3 or 4 oils or sources of fats that are super healthy for us. So
yeah. Okay, so since I've taken us completely off track, bringing us back, let's talk about another myth that we want to debunk, and that is that human foods or table scraps are bad for dogs. So Dr. Zach, are human foods and table scraps bad for dogs?
Some of them are, but if you're following your channel and kind of what healthy human foods are, then I would say no. So again, blanket statement that creates this really bad myth. So table food is just this weird phrase. I never understood it from the beginning, because anything could be table food. You could put a banana on the table, and bananas are safe for dogs. Food, yeah. So but no, the theory that any food that you and I would be cooking for ourselves is not good to give to dogs is just simply inaccurate. It's not right. Now, of course, there's caveats to that in terms of what we're going to be feeding them. Like I wouldn't say, the spiciest enchilada you've ever had is the best thing to top your dog's food bowl with. That's definitely not where I'd be going with that. So, but things that are single ingredient or minimal ingredient that don't have, really any excessive flavorings or spices on it, are definitely safe to give to your dog. And in before, I'd say like the 1950s, that was mainly what dogs were eating. Before pet food became this huge movement, the kibble foods, they were eating kind of the things that the humans were eating most of the time. I guess they could also be hunting outside, but um, no, the blanket statement that anything you eat that's on the table is bad for your dog is a myth that has to be busted.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And a lot of people that will follow me or you pretty clearly understand the value of feeding pet safe, real, fresh human foods, which basically is most, as you said, most anything we would eat ourselves without a lot of the excess seasonings and spices and things. Although some seasonings and spices can be healthy, but that's another video. Um, Barring a lot of the extremes, I mean, most of the time we could share it with our dogs. But dogs like us can tolerate things differently. Like one of my dogs doesn't do really great with plain, pure pumpkin, which we see all the time that is great for dogs. Just gives them some loose stool. And so I stopped giving it to them. And I think the other reason I wanted to bring this one up as a myth is because I see this a lot where we talk about the study that Purdue University did, where they showed that by taking a bowl of kibble, replacing about 20% of it, 15 to 20% of it with real fresh foods, dark leafy greens, could reduce the chances of bladder cancer by up to 90%, for example. So they saw a really strong positive correlation between feeding fresh foods and replacing some of the processed foods with that. What I will see sometimes is that people will say, well, I tried to give my dog a piece of banana or an apple or a little piece of raw chicken, and then they got diarrhea or loose stool, vomiting. So all human food or table scraps are bad. So yeah, I'll let you speak to that because I know that's something you probably hear a lot too.
Yeah, I think that due to the fact that a lot of dogs nowadays only eat the same thing every single day, when you do change that up, that can cause the body to get scared. Like for example, I've been vegan now for 7 years, and if I ate a Philly cheesesteak tomorrow, it would be
It would not be
wrath.
good.
So
It would not be
no,
good.
I can't do it. It's just how it is because my gut's not used to it, my body's not used to it. So I don't think that a lot of times that reaction means that the food is bad. I think a lot of times, um, just like with humans, like if an animal hasn't seen something in a long time or ever, there's a chance that the body may not know what to do with it, and it can have an inflammatory response. It's its job is to protect us from things outside that are foreign. So that's why a lot of times, for example, that's why my favorite consult on the telehealth is the holistic puppy kitten wellness power class. So
Mm.
because if we start these animals off early with a lot of the principles that you and I talk about, in terms of starting off with a diet that is um, species appropriate early on, that's with whole foods, if we can organic, then those are things that are going to set up an animal for being adaptable to the changes of life in a much more consistent manner. But if you'd eaten the same thing every day for 4 or 5 years, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to start including this in my dog's food because it's healthy. It's not that it's not healthy. It's just that that animal's never seen that before, and their gut may need time to get used to it, or the transition to a whole food diet may take more time for that animal, especially if they have potential food sensitivities or food allergies or combination allergies, skin and gut. So those are all factors that play into the ability to include these in your dog's diet, especially if they've never done before, and you may have had an adverse response once.
Yeah. I do have it's completely free, but a guide for those that just want to get started feeding fresh foods. It has a whole list of things that are safe. That'll be linked below. But just to summarize, at least for my dogs, how I started was like really slow and gradual,
Mhm.
as Dr. Zach said. Like if you're feeding kibble and only kibble, maybe just like few blueberries to start, and then slowly decrease the amount of kibble and increase the amount of fresh foods. And I think the general consensus of most veterinarians that support fresh food feeding is that when you're feeding a balanced kibble diet, because we don't want to mess with that, right? We want to make sure that they're eating a balanced diet,
Mhm.
that you're safe to replace up to about 10, 15, maybe as high as 20% at most of the bowl of kibble, like replacing that with pet safe, real, fresh human foods and still get the benefit of having the balanced base of the kibble,
Mhm.
but the benefit of feeding fresh foods, which has Enormous benefits. And yes, there are studies. People always ask, "Oh, there's a study about fresh foods." And there are. There are absolutely studies that show the benefits of feeding that. So, but that's not what this is about.
Isn't
Let's
that
go.
crazy? We have to make a study
I know.
to eat fresh food.
I know. And as you said, kibble.
Surprising.
Yeah,
Fresh food's
I'm,
good.
I know. And neither of us are anti kibble, but uh, kibble's only 100 years old. So it's like, it is. It's crazy that we have to prove
Yeah.
that food
The
is.
things that are right outside are terrible for us. So
Yeah.
no, they're not. They're great for you.
I
So
know, I know. And especially in your profession, because I know you have a lot of colleagues that, I know
yeah.
you get a lot of pressure. And, kudos to you, Dr. Zach. I just have to say, because I know that there's a lot of pressure in your field in general. Has to be one of the hardest jobs out there, in my opinion. But like having colleagues that probably don't always agree with, your advanced studies, I think it just takes a lot. So thank you for going against the grain. Um, okay, so let's go to the next topic. I do want to talk. So we're still need to talk about chicken bones and dogs. We're going to talk about bathing, how much is too much, and Dr. Zach has a lot of expertise in studies and research in dermatology. But first, let's talk about paw pads. So one of the myths, and I know you see this a lot in emergency care, I'll say this: are paw pads insulated enough to protect our dog against abrasive or hot temperatures?
Yeah, it's crazy because I work mostly in Florida, so we
Oh
see dogs
yeah.
all the time outside at times when it's not good. So no, this is 100% a myth. If something's burning your feet, whether it's sand or rocks or the street, then your pup is not going to be comfortable after a couple minutes. And I think that we have this theory that they have these thick pads, which don't get me wrong, they're probably a little bit tougher than our feet. I would say unless
Depending, unless you're one of those barefoot
yeah, right. Yeah, there's some
grounding
people out there that
people.
are nuts. People that climb mountains with no shoes on. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about just plain Jane, you and me. If something's burning your feet on the ground, then within a few minutes, it's going to bother your dog as well. And that
Yeah.
doesn't just include hot, because we see most times it's hot where they'll get burns but it also includes things that are gravelly or sharp. Like there's a lot of places where there's little rocks and stones on the ground that are you know, painful. And so, those are not good. Those are not substrates that are going to make your dog feel good. And so this is a myth for sure. Like they're not made of steel, and their feet are sensitive, and
Oh.
it's important for us to know that. And, I had a little stint too, right? Where your pup, you weren't even on anything bad, but, you got a little scrape or a burn, and, you had to treat it. But, I'm guessing you weren't on 100-degree weather, and still, she did get a little scrape. So we have to be careful. We have to be aware of this because their feet are sensitive, and if you're not putting little booties on them, we have to be understanding the environment is still going to bother their feet too.
Yeah, so I learned the hard way with Marlo because it's not even just temperature, it's also distance. And I wanted to go hiking with her, and it was just a trail hike, and the weather was cool temperature wise. And I just took her too far. And the thing is she didn't tell me, she didn't limp, she didn't we just kept going. And it was, I don't know, maybe a mile and a half or 2 miles or something. But she was at the time only maybe not even a year and a half at that point. So still kind of puppy.
Mm.
Um, and part of the trail had like this small, I don't know if it was crushed gravel, but it was like really, really fine little rocks.
Yeah.
So it was the next day or maybe 2 days later, she started walking towards me and kind of was limping. And I was like, oh my gosh, thinking she had a foxtail. Well, turns out she had a little, I guess, tear or something in her paw pad. And I'm like, Dr.
Yeah.
Zach, oh my gosh. They
Yeah.
put this silver high. So I used Naked Pet products. I'll link those below because it healed up so quickly. And I did rest with her, right? Like we didn't do any other hikes, but I used the silver hydrosol.
Mm.
And then there was I forget the name of the other one.
The skin rejuvenator.
And the skin rejuvenator. Those are the two that I used
Yeah.
alternatively. And it was like a few days and she was like fine. But to me, I make videos on like how to avoid this stuff and it happened to me. So it's just good to have. That's why I like having that product on hand all times as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That silver hydrosol we sell is the safe. and one of the most potent anesthetics you could ever imagine. Just be careful when you're buying silver products out there, because 99% of them are not true. So if you ever want to know more about that, it's
I
on
was
my
gonna,
list.
I was gonna
I'm
say we're not
silver.
going off that
I'm a
deep end
silver
because
hydrosol nerd, because it's, there's so many on the market, and when you dive into it and you see which ones are completely fake, it's really scary. It's pretty much every single one of them. So it took months for us to find a company that we could source from that was doing scientific testing to prove what was in it.
yeah.
And then the skin rejuvenator is actually the only product that I actually didn't change the formula at all from the individual I work with for the formula. It is 100% a human grade product that my formulator uses for humans to help with scars, wrinkles, aging, post-op surgeries for plastic surgery, to help get rid of scars and burns and everything. So that product is amazing, because it actually has blueberry extract is the main ingredient. So for healing, anything that I use that myself. Marlo uses it. That's an amazing product.
Yeah, Marlo uses it. Bentley uses. There's my senior had we think like not flea, a fly bite. There's a certain summer fly, and he was getting these rashes, and I was like spraying it on, and it's like gone. I'm like, oh my gosh. Which I need to post that, by the way. I need to show the befores and afters,
Yeah,
because it's pretty amazing.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay, so let's talk about. I do want to talk about our dog's weight, but first let's talk about chicken bones or just raw bones in general. So, Dr. Zach, do you feel safe feeding dogs bones? I'm gonna leave it generic and let you answer.
All right, bones. I'm going to call that a blanket statement, because there
Yeah.
are some bones that, I do think are not safe for dogs. Specifically, the ones that have the hole in the middle that has side. I am afraid of those, because I've seen those go wrong multiple times. But the ones that we do like, which are usually the small poultry bones, which are malleable.
Yeah.
And
I have a picture here, and this is a brand. I'm not endorsing this brand. This picture was kind of a good example. I'll let you keep talking,
yeah,
Dr. Zach, but I just wanted to show an image.
no, that's perfect. So the little wings or the necks of the birds, those have bones that are usually pretty easily chewed, and in actuality, it's probably a good ratio of even 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 bone to cartilage. So cartilage is in there as well. Cartilage is chewy. It's not going to cause a problem. So the blanket statement of bones is hard.
Yeah,
Again,
I guess I should have said poultry bones, because I think that was the original myth, because
yeah,
you hear all the time, never feed chicken bones.
yeah,
But that's just when they're cooked, is I think
yeah,
what we were trying to get at. And I love making it complicated for you.
yeah.
Your eyes are like, wait, it's a big question.
I need 45 minutes for that one.
Yeah.
So, but no, the cooked side is the one that that's the one we see all the time through the emergency room. And not to say every dog, gets sick from the cooked ones, but that's the one that has a chance of causing a problem where it can stab through their intestinal tract, if it doesn't get digested fast enough. So most times they do, but it is the one that carries a risk. So, but if it's a raw, poultry bone that has a high amount of cartilage still in it, usually they're easily chewed, and unless you have a dog that's a gulper, which there are some out there, I would probably chop it up into little pieces, but for the most part, those are going to be safe and have health benefits for sure, dental health benefits as well as general health benefits. So
Yeah. If I had to pick one food or treat even that I would feed that and like nothing else other than like a balanced diet, it would probably be a raw meaty bone is kind of what we technically call it, which are basically, again, always raw. So to caveat or to clarify for the 15th time, never cooked bones, smoked bones, none of those are healthy in any way, shape, or form. But raw meaty bones, there are risks, just like when you allow your dog to chew on a toy, a soft toy, a hard toy, just like if you're playing fetch, there's a risk for the ball to get lodged. I mean, there's a risk, but the healthy proteins, the fats, the dental benefits, the cartilage, as you said, those to me far outweigh any of the potential risks. And with my dogs, I started them day one, and I didn't get them all as young puppies. I started them by, getting a raw chicken wing or duck neck and holding it.
Mhm.
sometimes partially frozen, and just let them chew it. And we can do a whole video actually talking about like bone chewing safety and how to do it. And that would actually be interesting, like a whole deep dive on the type of bones, where to get the bones. Comment below for those watching if you would like that. I know Dr. Billinghurst as well is really passionate about bones. And I just, my dogs love it. And it's not even the health aspect, the enrichment aspect they get out of it. Like
Mm.
watching a dog gnaw and chew on a raw, meaty bone. It's, for me, it's really satisfying because it's getting to see them in their real natural instinct.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I personally have never seen the bones that we're talking about here, which either like the wings or the necks that are raw. I've never seen that really cause consistent problems in the emergency setting or in general. So,
Yeah.
it's the other ones that I'd be careful of. But those are, yeah, I agree with you. I think there's multiple benefits, not just health benefits, but also emotional benefits, and allowing them to do what dogs do, I guess,
Yeah, for sure. And again, with this, they are really rich. They can be rich for dogs. So, like, if you've never given one, right? Like, always work with your vet. I don't want to go into all the details of like how to do safe chewing, but just always supervise. Start very, very slow, gradual, like for a few minutes at a time. Take it away. Then there's a whole caveat of, I shouldn't say take away. I would say trade, because if we take something of that high value away from our dogs consistently, it could lead to resource guarding. So I
Mhm.
like to trade. Like when I take it, give them something of like a treat of value. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but the net of it is chicken bones, when not cooked, can be
Mhm.
absolutely healthy under the safe conditions.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk about bathing, and then I want to talk about our dog's weight. So, Dr. Zach, I have heard this my whole life, which is that, and you'll tell me if it's a myth or not, I guess, but this is what I've heard, that bathing our dogs regularly will strip their coat of the natural healthy oils, leaving their skin dry, dull, flaky, and that I either should never bathe my dogs or very, very rarely bathe them. Myth or fact?
Love the derm ones. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, no. So this again, I think we literally, this is a perfect time for this one because I just posted on, well, not me, my assistant, but my team just posted on the Naked Pet social media platform this myth, because it's the main one we hear actually all the time. Because obviously, Naked Pet, the products that we created, um, they were meant for both animals that are healthy as a preventative measure, and they're safe for that, but also therapeutic for animals that have skin conditions. And the reason for that is because skin, ear, anal gland conditions are the number one reason people go to the veterinary office, and that's how it works. And the fact that I feel like the market is extremely limited in companies that are doing the right thing for the skin side. And I mean, if you ask 10 humans, I guarantee 9 out of 10 of them have a nightly skin regimen, and might even include a morning skin regimen and or during the day regimen. So something that is literally integral to every single human's life. And in dogs, we feel like, they're dogs, they've been outside and they're fine. But nowadays, especially with more of the breeding patterns and the feeding patterns, etc., there are more and more dogs that are not fine just living as a dog and not having a skin regimen. So it sounds weird to put it like that, but I think this is important for us to really be considering now. So to come back, full circle to the myth, no, it's all dependent on the dog or the pet you're looking at, because cats get skin conditions too,
Hmm.
and the products you're using, and that is what can make this either a myth or not. So if you're using, for example, a lot of the substances that are included in the mainstream products that have been out there for most of the time, which would include chlorhexidine based or salicylic acid based or benzoyl peroxide based, these are potent antiseptics, and they're not meant to be used on a consistent basis. They're meant to stop the condition at the source and help with controlling bacterial and or fungal overgrowth at that time. So one bath with that, to me, again, is because I'm very much in the middle of that, is safe, and we use those a lot of time. They're prescribed a lot of time, but those are not used weekly, in my opinion, because they do then cause the side effects that you had mentioned, where dry, flaky skin, irritated skin, can even start to cause a rebound where the skin then becomes super oily and seborrheic from what we're doing to it, and it can cause then a vicious cycle. The alternative side is that something that is pH balanced, all natural, holistic, can be used on a very consistent basis, and especially for dogs that are dealing with dermatologic skin conditions where the disease is at the skin, you need to address the source of the disease. Obviously, a global addressment is also impossible, or consideration. So we talk all the time about diet modification and supplements that we can do orally, but the disease and the organ that's being affected by the disease is the skin, and we have to address that, and we have to address it consistently. It's not something that we can just do once and we're going to cure it. It's not how it works. Yeah. So especially for dogs that are dealing with allergic-based skin disease, which we see all the time, or recurrent ear infections or anal gland problems, they need a skin regimen plan for maintenance therapy. And that's why we create a Naked Pet, is because it's safe on what you just mentioned, where the 4 to 6 weeks, bath every now and then for preventative health and for an all-natural option for dogs, which I would 100% agree, so that we don't get ourselves into that sick spot. But for the dogs that are sick, an all-natural medicated bath once a week or even more, in combination with other holistic products daily, is, in my opinion, mandatory to keep them as comfortable as possible. So that's a myth.
Yeah, I love that. I actually have the label here because I'm just such a fan of the product, and I just love, for those who just want to quickly view, it'll be linked below per usual. But I mean, this is the only pet I mean, this is just the shampoo. Obviously, you have a lot of other products, but it's the only one that I've ever seen that is completely non-toxic. It's made with completely pet safe, all natural ingredients. You're not going to see SLS or parabens or formaldehyde, GMOs, PEG, which are things that, oh man, I need to go to a pet store and show the labels. That would be a good
you should
video.
do that, because you do the food one. So you should do
that's a good idea. Because think about it, like they're arguably, some people think differently apparently, but arguably their skin, right, is their largest organ. I heard once Dr. Zach, somebody say their microbiome is like their largest organ. So first largest, second largest. So it's like what you, yeah, I hadn't either. I was like, okay, well, maybe, but either way, what you put on them matters. So something that like is actually pure human grade is so valuable. And there's been so many people in my community that's tried your products and love them. And it's really cool because like, obviously it's like you, so it's like a very small business, which I love supporting. But also one that's doing it right, and you're not some big investment firm just trying to make a product. Like, you're a professional in the field who treats these things all the time, and you have the expertise, so you're able to make something that's effective, that is also safe. So anyways, I keep plugging it, but I just love it. I can't help it. Okay, so that was bathing. And okay, so let's talk about obesity in dogs and dogs being overweight. So, Dr. Zach, a lot of times I hear from people that I'm trying to pose this in like a myth or fact. So I'm going to make a statement and then I'll do the myth. So the statement is that, and I've been guilty of thinking this and maybe even acting on this too, that like we love our animals, and in our culture, we love sharing food with each other, cooking for each other, going out to meals together. And we often in our culture like to feed each other, give each other food as a way of love. And sometimes that translates to our dogs and giving extra treats or extra calories or bigger meals because we want them to be happy. So the myth, or so the question here is, how do I word this? How bad is it? I'll keep it very simple. How bad is it to allow our dog to get just a little bit overweight, just a little bit pudgy, just so I can continue to give them the extra treats and chews?
Not sure how to make that into a myth, but
I know it's really more of a question, but
excessive weight doesn't really have an effect on my dog.
Okay.
We like that.
There we go. There's my statement. Excessive weight excessive weight or being overweight doesn't have much of a health impact on my dog. Myth or fact?
Yeah. So for some reason, this is the hard. I feel like honestly, maybe talking to people about diet is hard too, but this is the one that people take the hardest, and it's interesting because you have to word it the right way. But there's only one. The way I started off all the time is that there's only really one disease that is 100% controllable in pets that then can downstream lead to almost every other disease that we see in some way or fashion. So whether it's metabolic, whether it's orthopedic, neurologic, spinal, as well as brain, is having excessive weight on an animal. And it's really hard because some of our pets are like 5 pounds, so excessive weight could be half a pound,
Yeah.
and it's a ratio every time. But staying lean, and we've seen studies in humans about a lean body condition score and eating healthy and natural, and even things that include intermittent fasting, that these are all things that maximize ability for and a creature, whether human or non-human, to live a longer, healthier life. And the opposite, where overweight, which causes insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome and excessive pressure on joints and bones and backs, promotes fogginess, promotes potential dementia and long-term brain degeneration. Having even 10% over the recommended weight for an animal can have exponential negative effects on them. So, and it's also hard because, for example, if you watch the dog shows, it's valued that an animal be overweight in most of those shows. They prioritize the animals that are overweight. So it's very hard nowadays to know what is normal. And I hear all the time that, I can see my dog's ribs in the back, like they're malnourished. And it's hard. It's a hard conversation because you're supposed, if you look at the chart that we use technically to help determine ideal body weight, you're supposed to see some ribs. So it is really difficult. It's a really difficult conversation when you're trying to say it in a way that's going to be educational. But to answer the myth, excessive weight is probably one of the most negatively influential, but also the easiest ways we can maximize our pets' lives for longevity, which is my favorite thing, which is anti-aging medicine, longevity medicine. And so keeping your animals lean is the best way that we can do that outside of genetic predispositions, et cetera.
That was brilliantly said. And I had no idea about the dog shows. That
Oh
blew
yeah.
my mind. And it does make sense from the bits that I've seen. I think they played on Thanksgiving or something like that.
Yeah, there's like
Interesting.
puppy show.
And this is all backed by science too, by the way. But before I show that, I pulled up this chart. I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but this is I think a pretty good standard for those of you that are like wondering, is my dog overweight? One of the best ways to find out is probably asking your veterinarian. I think is a good way to do it. But what I find interesting in this one, it's probably hard to see, but like if we look at a dog that's considered over ideal weight, so they're overweight, number 789, it says that ribs are palpable with slight excess fat covering. So what that's saying is, one example that stood out to me is that a lot of us, as you said, like my dogs are very lean. And I do get, my mom sometimes, she'll be like, "You've got a skinny poodle over there." I'm like, "He's a lean boy," but you can see his ribs, but nothing crazy. But like, according to that chart, even a slight ability to feel the ribs is considered overweight. So as you said, it's a very touchy situation. Breeds can vary. Some breeds, I think, my understanding, I'm not an expert on this, are very lean genetically. Like they're just kind of leaner looking dogs. Other dogs might be larger stature, but generally speaking, and then there's mixed mutts, whatever you want to call them. So it's hard to know, but generally speaking, I think working with your vet might be a good way
Yeah.
to really know.
Yeah, for sure. It's something you have to get. It takes like a muscle memory almost to start to know what's the right weight. And I've heard bad advice. Even coming from all
Yeah.
different parties. So it's not like a foolproof situation. But You know, like I said before, I think that this is the best thing to literally do as a pet parent. Two things would be: number one, starting dental prevention early, because dental disease is the number one source for infections and for inflammation to get throughout the body. And number two, keeping them a lean weight starting off early, because that's the best way to maximize a healthy metabolic system and to create a balanced immune system that's not always on high alert. And if we look at what causes aging and what causes degeneration, it's oxidative stress and inflammation. And
Yeah.
so both of those are ways that we can minimize those and maximize the life of your pet.
And as I said, this is backed by science. This is hard to see, but for those of you watching live, this will be published forever. So you can come back and kind of zoom in on it. But they literally, in this study, they studied over 50,000 dogs. I think it was over 12 breeds. And they found that there was a correlation between being overweight and a reduced lifespan by up to 2.5 years, which basically means that, or meant that, what they found in these thousands and thousands of dogs over multiple breeds, that if the dog was overweight, they could lose 2.5 years of life, which for dogs that may only live 10, 12, 13 years, that's a lot. And I know that I saw somebody post something. I don't remember who it was or where it was. And I wish I would have screenshotted it, but they said that like they would they would literally pay anything to have one more year with their dog or with their pet, or 2 more years. And as Dr. Zach so beautifully said, this is one of the things that is most in our control to be able to hopefully make that happen. So I think that's a very powerful takeaway to the ending of this, which is like right on the dot, right on time.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
We
crazy.
pet parents have they have a lot of influence in their
Yeah.
pets' lives. It's not, especially nowadays. And I think that it's also not as complicated as it seems. Like information overload. I start every telehealth consult with that phrase. If you ever do a consult with me, I'm going to start it with, the world is confusing. It's information overload right now. There's just so
Mhm.
much static electricity of information all around us. It's hard to know what's relevant, what's true, what's not true, what's irrelevant, what I even have to worry about in my life, even if it is relevant. But I think that is a takeaway that you could use at any point, which is that, starting early and, understanding the benefits of an animal being a healthy weight, and then, throw the dental disease in there because dental is important. That those are the two best things that a pet parent you could ever do to maximize longevity, and then the rest, is sprinkled on top.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really valuable. I think a couple notes on that. One, I know I've said this before, but we've had quite a few people pop in to book a telehealth vet appointment with you, like from pretty much anywhere in the world, virtually. That's linked below. And then all of the pet shampoos and topical products that are completely vegan, human grade are also linked below, as well as a ton of free guides and guides in general to help, whether you have allergy issues, you want help with what are pet safe foods, what are pet safe human foods that you can add to the bowl, how to start raw feeding. There's a ton down there. So definitely check those out. And I highly encourage, a lot of people are actually getting a lot of good chats in here. Do you have a
Mhm.
second to answer a couple questions from the chat, Dr. Zach?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I actually don't know this one. In this, Marilyn is asking about natural things to do for hook and ringworms. Um, or do we even need to try to prevent this? And I think where this is stemming from is there is a lot of messaging out there, like our dogs are going to get worms and we need to give these flea and tick preventatives, monthly
Right.
preventatives that have worm prevention. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that hooks and roundworms. If I had to, I'm not sure. I'm not a type because ringworm is a skin fungus. I think she means roundworms. I'm not positive.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. This is more of a, because I think there's like Frontline and Heart, these different monthly preventatives that will have these worm
Yeah.
advertisements on there. And
So what I would
while, oh, go ahead.
so what I would start with is I would start with not even I would get a fecal sample done. just to see if we even have to worry about it, because you may not even have to worry about it. If you test positive for one of these parasites, then maybe we could talk about it. But I'm always diagnosed. That's the way I've approached it, because it's similar to anything. We shouldn't be prescribing antibiotics unless we have proof there's an infection. So that's a classic example. So
Yeah.
if we don't have an intestinal parasite burden, we don't need to worry about it. So first off, fecal oviparasite Giardia testing would be where I'd start. If we do then have proof that we have parasites, then there's a list of potential all-natural products or ingredients you can try. I think actually Katie Woodley did a good one once that I watched, that she had 4 or 5 things that she listed. But the ones that I have seen consistently, that I help use intermittently, the classic one you see is like pumpkin seeds. I've never used pumpkin seeds. I just mentioned that one first because people talk about that all the time. But like a teaspoon of ground pumpkin seeds for like 5 kilograms, 10 pounds is something people talk about. But I think the one that a lot of people use is diatomaceous food grade diatomaceous earth, and that a lot of times if you have to first dilute it in water, you can't let it be powdery because that can hurt their airway. But that is one that's used both for external ectoparasites and for intestinal parasites or endoparasites. There's a couple of extracts that are used that I think would be best to have under the guidance of a veterinarian. But for example, black walnut and wormwood are 2 that I see. And then Oregon grape, I think, is actually the safest one. So there's a product out there that's similar to Paragard. There was a Paragard craze a couple of years or months or years ago. People were just deworming themselves at home, which I don't know. There was a whole scare about it.
Okay, I missed that one. Yeah, I don't know.
I actually did it because I actually am going through a process right now. Getting diagnosed with SIBO or IBS. So I tried it and nothing came out. I was disappointed, but apparently a lot of people have had success with that one. There's a lot of those compounds that I just mentioned, the black walnut, the wormwood, etc. There's several in there that one has. But the reason why I mentioned that is because it also has like clove and anise and a couple of the other things that we had talked about earlier, which can be essential oils that are dose dependent with a smaller therapeutic window and maybe potentially cause side effects. So all in all, and garlic is the last one I would say. Again, garlic's never bad, and it would have to be consistent. It's not going to be 1 garlic clove and worms are gone, but it would be something that you can add that daily at the, I think we said the half clove per 10 pound kind of recommendation. And those are things you can do all natural. So, but I would start with getting a test to even see if you need this, because you may not even need to be worried about this.
Yeah, actually, Marlo she was a rescue, foster that we had eventually adopted, and she tested positive for I think it was hookworm, and she didn't really have any side effects or symptoms that I saw. Like it was just a standard what the rescue recommended.
Right.
And I'll just say I did whatever the convention. I mean, at the time we didn't know we were keeping her, and I had to kind of do what the rescue said, but I just did whatever they recommended, which I think was, I don't remember what the medicine was, but it was just a standard conventional medicine, and it worked, and she seems fine. So that's my personal experience.
Yeah. And what I will say is that the medication at least that I use, which is, oh my God.
Is it Panicure?
Panicure, yeah. I was trying to think of the scientific name, but benzimidazole. So Panicure is essentially a molecule which I think actually a lot of people don't have in the holistic space, right? In the holistic space, no problem, because it actually shows some potential for being anti-cancer and also helps in metabolic cases. So it's not the worst, honestly, if you have to go conventional. If you want to try the natural route first, I don't think that there's going to be a problem unless you have a really bad worm burden. But I would say that the medication that we use in that sense, there's several you can use, like the flea and tick products I would not recommend starting with, that are, the really classic insecticides. But if you do need to use a conventional, the Panicure product is relatively safe and actually may have some benefits health-wise, depending on the situation.
Well, good. I don't feel as bad about it. A quick shout out. We have some heroes in the chat. We have the two crazy cat ladies, Jay and Adrian. So shout out to you guys. I just put their website on the screen. So anybody who has a cat, you need to visit their new website. It just relaunched, twocrazycatladies.com. It has all of the cat tips you could ever want, and we'll answer every single we'll answer every single cat question you have, from diet, health, preventative care. They are your number one go-to source for cats altogether. So for all the cat people out there, please go check their website out. I love those two humans very much. Ari has an interesting question. Ari says, do you have any advice on gauging if your pet is a healthy weight if they are really fluffy? It's difficult to tell, which is true. I have two fluffy dogs. I'll let you answer, Dr. Zach, but for me, I check them when I bathe them, because their fur goes
Yeah.
down and I can kind of see. And then in the summer, I keep my fluffy dogs, I keep them short because we're active and I just don't want to deal with all the mats. But so when they first get shaven down, not all the way shaven, but cut short, I can check then, and also when I bathe them. What do you say, Dr. Zach, to that?
I'm gonna say that it's more difficult. I would say
Yeah.
I definitely can feel and resonate for you, because it can be tougher for sure. But what I would say probably is I would have your vet show you the first time and be like, how are they assessing their body weight and what to feel for, and be involved in that determination at the vet's office. So have them show you, like, what are they feeling and why are they saying this, because they're feeling this. So and the bathing thing is a pretty interesting recommendation. I kind of like that one.
I mean, that's just what I do. Cause
I
like,
like that idea. I think
yeah,
that's great.
I was like, oh, well
But
that,
I think that's what I would do is, it's hard to say, there's different types of fluffy. There's dogs that have really thick undercoats, and
Mhm.
there's dogs that are like light and fluffy. So it's not going to be a visual thing. It is a palpating thing. So, like, if you watch me at a vet office, for example, I don't know if every vet does this, but I feel every dog literally from neck down to their ankles. And because I'm feeling for lumps, I'm feeling for bumps, I'm feeling for, changes to the body wall. I'm trying to see if one of their joints is thickened, and, maybe it's degenerative, and at the same time, I'm assessing their body mass. And so, for me at least, I usually touch, if it's a wellness exam, I would say every emergency that comes in, I'm not going to be like, oh, your left
Is it
paw feels
bleeding out? You're
strange,
like, let me see. A little
you
chunky
got a
here
really
now.
mobile left wrist. That's great,
Yeah.
but no, if it's a wellness, we're supposed to be, on the vet side at least, like, feeling them head to toe, like that's we're supposed to be an additional eye. So, but to answer that question, I would go to your vet on your next wellness, or even book appointments. Be like, hey, I just want to see how I can maintain my dog's weight at home healthy, and I want to be able to make sure I'm managing that. And I feel like every vet would be excited to do that. I would be like, oh, awesome! Like, someone cares as much as I do about this. Let's do it. So
Yeah.
I would definitely want to show 5-minute tutorial or less on how to manage your pet's weight at home in a healthy way, for sure. That's what I would say, though.
Yeah, I think that should maybe be another live we do, is like literally, because I do get that, which we won't go over now. It'd be a teaser, but I get that question of, I know my dog is a little bit, or even quite a bit overweight. What do I do? And I know that there's actually a bit of controversy going on with the idea of just feeding less, because potentially kibble fed dogs, there may not be the appropriate amount of nutrients. Well, there's interesting stuff. I'll have to send you. I don't know if you've seen that, Dr. Zach. So we'll have to deep dive that and make sure we get the latest. But that said, I think we've covered most of the things. I think the most important takeaway is for everyone to share this, because this is the kind of information that I feel like most holistic veterinarians would I mean, this would be like, you're basically giving away like free appointments, which is pretty cool. And we're very grateful for that and your time and experience and expertise. So this is the kind of information that could really help people. So I really encourage you to please share this with friends and family on whatever social platform you are. Subscribe, check out Dr. Zach's information, which is all linked below. But I think with that said, I think we'll end it here. We'll be back soon with an Ask a Vet. So make sure you're following us both on our social channels, because we do give you a place to submit your questions to the Ask a Vet so that we can actually help you guys one-on-one. Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Any last things? Any last things for the people, Dr. Zach? This was a good one, so they're loving it. It doesn't have to be pet related, something fun, something maybe something you learned in general.
It's summertime. Get some sun out. Get some sun. It's the best thing for you.
Sun. Yeah, I love that.
I work nights and I still get some sun.
I know.
I'm off to work in 45 minutes. So.
Oh gosh. Okay, well then we'll let you go. Thank you everybody for being